Crown of Tempests or Geomags was probably the only two things I ever used when it came to Arc Warlocks. However, there is a new contestant from Season of the Plunder to take that exotic slot. Hello everyone, my name is ERATTIC and today I am going to be showing off a brand new build with my Arc Warlock using the brand new exotic Fallen Star. Remember, if you see anything you like in today's video, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe for more. We are currently at 574 subs, which is amazing, but I'm looking to see if we can hit my next big goal of 1000 subs. So I'm hoping you'll be the one who gets me there. So in today's video, I will be breaking down the Fallen Sunstar build that I've built for Warlocks in PvE. Remember, this is not the be all end all for this particular build, meaning that if you find something equally as good, if not better than what I've got for today, then that's great. Perhaps leave it for us in the comments for me and the rest of us to know about. But if you're looking for similar results as to what I'm doing in this video, then I suggest you pay close attention as to what I'm using. However, I also recommend use this build guide as a template and refine it to your personal needs. The guide will be broken down into the subclass with its abilities, aspects and fragments, then the overall stats, then the armor with the mods, then the weapons of choice, and finally how the build works and recommendations. So be sure to check all the time codes in the description of this video if you're looking for something in particular. Okay, so diving in right from the start with the subclass, and the super I am using is Stormcaller. Chain arc lightning from your hands to electrify targets with devastating streams of arc light that intensify over time. Casting Storm Trance creates a shockwave underneath you. Honestly, I haven't really felt the need to use this super a lot other than getting myself out of sticky situations. But I prefer it over Chaos Reach because for that super I feel like I'm only making a significant impact if I'm combining that with Geomags, which is not what I'm using here. For my abilities, I am using Healing Rift, Burst Glide, Chain Lightning I find more consistent, and Storm Grenades. For my aspects, I am using Electrostatic Mind. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace. Collecting an Ionic Trace makes you amplified. And then I'm also using Arc Soul. Cast your Rift to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through your Rift to get an Arc Soul. Your Rift charges faster when allies are near. While amplified, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. For my fragments, I am using Spark of Shock, which allows my arc grenades to jolt targets, but it does take away 10 discipline. I'm using Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. I'm using Spark of Amplitude, so rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. And then finally I'm using Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace, however this does take away 10 strength. Moving on to the overall stats, and you'll want to work on the stats that lean more into the abilities, because the aim of this build is to try and obtain as many Ionic Traces as possible so we can be feeding ability energy back to not only us but to our teammates as well. So maxing on discipline is a top priority because making Ionic Traces will mostly come from our grenades. The rest of my stats is built more into survivability, such as the resilience and recovery, which I'd argue generically on anyone's character is better to have, but in this case I prefer it a bit more intellect and strength. Moving on to the armor with the mods now, and starting with the exotic helmet Fallen Sunstar that comes with the exotic perk Ionic Conductor. Ionic Traces you create move faster and grant you additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an Ionic Trace. The mods I have in my helmet are Harmonic Siphon, Rapid Weapon Final Blows with damage matching your subclass type create an orb of power. Equipping multiple copies of this mod increases the potency of the generated orb, so I run double. And then I finally have Elemental Time Dilation. Elemental Well mods that grant you time limited benefits can now stack, increasing the duration of the effect for each copy of the mod you have equipped. For the arms, I am using Fastball, which increases the grenade throw distance, Fragments, and then I'm using Elemental Ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type. For the chest piece, I am using Thermoshock Plating, which reduces incoming solar and arc damage from combatants. I run 2 of these, and then I'm running Bountiful Wells. Elemental well mods that cause you to spawn elemental wells can now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. For the legs, I am using Recuperation, replenishes health each time you pick up an Orb of Power, and then I'm using Innovation, reduces grenade cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power, and then finally I'm using Font of Might. Picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same elemental type. Finally, for the bond, I'm using Amped Up, which allows me to stay amplified for longer. I'm using Seeking Wells, elemental wells you create will move across the ground to nearby players. And then finally, I'm using Trace Evidence. Defeating combatants affected by arc debuffs spawn an Ionic Trace. For my choice of weapons, the most important one I use is Trinity Ghoul for the absolute ad clearing capabilities it has, and it being an arc weapon to tie in with the build. Other than that, I like to use Heritage with this roll and either Eager Edge for movement or Taipan for damage. However, the seasonal arc linear would be ideal here. Onto the opening to the preservation mission now, and to show how the build works now, and there's no rocket science to how this actually works. You pretty much need to open up with cycling your abilities to put them on cooldown. At the same time, with those abilities, you'll be jolting targets and defeating them to create the traces to get your ability energy back for you and others in your fire team. This lets me move on to recommendations and to what I think very quickly. I realised in the bond I put on Trace Evidence, which is doing almost the exact same thing for the Spark of Ions fragment, so I recommend swapping either one or the other to benefit from something else. I think using the Lightning Strikes Twice mod might be a good idea instead, which sits in the bond. This build is okay for me once I had a mess with it, and it stayed at okay, because I didn't really feel like anything special was happening for me when I was playing with others, because I couldn't really measure how effective the energy was going back to my fire team. One thing I will say is that if I have to run Arc for any Triumph situations or GMs, if Arc is needed, then I won't feel so bad about playing it because it's better in a group situation than Crown of Tempests. The problem I have with this is that if I was on my own, I would rather run other subclasses for a start compared to Arc right now, because we are so strong and survivability is more valued with the state of the game, which Solar and Void can provide. I will say also, however, that there are quite a few different Warlock exotics I just won't ever run unless there is a shift in the class meta with interactions or reworks come about, and yet I can still see myself using this exotic periodically when I need to for reasons I've already previously stated. The fact that the interactions from the helmet don't require you to do anything special other than play how you normally would with the Arc subclass to get extra value from the Ionic Traces, which also benefits everyone near, is highly valued in my opinion. I feel like we are in a period of the game where exotics that benefit more than yourself get a lot more usage. Anyway, that's going to be it for me for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you all in the next one.